In this video, we will set up iRules on our Big IP appliance. iRules provides more advanced functionality to the Big IP to meet unique requirements that may exist. So in our environment, we will create some of those unique requirements and implement that into our network. So iRules involves creating TCL-based scripts to determine which server pool a client should be redirected to. What we will do is discuss iRules, we'll talk about its structure, and we will provide a couple of practical uses of iRules scripts in many real-world cases. So before we set up iRules, here's how our environment is set up today. So we have a single HTTP pool with 4 web servers, and this pool is added to a couple of virtual servers. What we would do is create 3 new web pools that will be used with our iRules to meet specific requirements based on what our client has or what they will be accessing. Therefore, let's go back to the pools page, which is here under local traffic. Okay, let's create a new pool. Okay, so each of these pools will consist of 1 web server, one of the 4 that we have in our environment. So this pool will list web server 1 as a pool member. So from the top, we will enter a name. We'll say something like pool W1 for web server 1. Okay. For the health monitor, we will select HTTP. Okay. The load balancing method, we will select least connections based on the node, which is right here. Oh, where is it? There it is. Okay, and as for the members, we will check node list since we already have nodes added into our Big IP appliance. And we will add web server 1, which is selected here first, and the application will be HTTP. So let's select that. And let's add this member and then finish. Okay, now let's add another one, and this will be for a web pool that will list web server 2 as the pool member. So this will be W2. We'll select the health monitor. We'll select the load balancing method. Okay, and we will select web server 2 as a pool member. Let's say add and then finish. And then once this completes, we will add our last web pool that will list web server 3. Okay, we'll select our health monitor, our load balancing method, web server 3 as the pool member and the application, and add and then finish. Next, we will create a new virtual server. So let's go to virtual servers. And here we see our other virtual servers that we have set up along with the virtual addresses under this tab here that was also configured. So those virtual servers are mapped to a single pool providing a static configuration to the client. So what we would do is create another virtual server, but it will reference all of our pools that we configured. Well, that will be done by using iRules. Before we do that, let's create a new virtual server. So let's go back here and then to create. Then here at the top, we will enter a name reflecting that this will be a custom virtual server that will redirect a client to any of our pools. So we'll say VS custom. Okay, and next we will enter a new virtual address that will listen to client requests. And that'll be 10.254.1.13, a IP that is available on that particular network. And it will listen to client requests for the HTTP application. So we'll select that here for service port. Then from there, we would basically go down towards the bottom. Let's do that. And we would normally select our resources that this virtual server would be mapped to. Now, normally we would select our pool under default pool. Well, another resource option is selecting an iRule, which is what we will do. Therefore, this virtual server will not be selecting any specific pool, But for right now, we will go ahead and we will save our changes. We will come back to this later when we set up our iRules scripts. Next, we need to do our scripting. If you are familiar with scripting in general, then pretty much what I would say will be very easy to pick up. It's a matter of picking up the various conditions or variables to use. But if you are new to scripting, it may take some time and a lot of practice to get comfortable with this. But I will explain this in simple terms because it really isn't that challenging once you understand the structure behind it. Therefore, that is where we will begin with our iRules. And that is with the structure for how many of the rules are constructed. So iRules is based on the programming language called Tool Command Language, or TCL in short. And overall, it will consist of 4 main parts, which I have color-coded here for reference. The first component is here in red, and that will define the actual name of the iRules script. And this could be any name that you like. Now, when it comes to applying this iRule on our big IP, that part for the name itself will be omitted because we can simply apply the name within a user-friendly text field in the GUI. The second component is the event, which is here in purple. And an event can be a specific client application request to maybe the state of the client, among other type of conditions. But these are events that the big IP should be looking at within each client request or the client state. So for example, maybe we want our big IP to inspect all client HTTP request messages when accessing a virtual server using HTTP. Well, that is considered as a type of event. And the syntax would begin with when, followed by the specific event that you want to look at for further actions. That is where the third component comes into play, which deals with conditions based on the event. And that's referenced here in green. So the condition indicates a specific statement and a query command that is supported based on the event. So for example, if the event is a HTTP request, we may have a condition where we want to look at what web browser a client may be using. And if it matches a specific condition, then it would do a certain action, which is listed here in a maroon color font. So, and there also could be several conditions that will give different actions. So these actions here really reflect which server pool the client should be sent to. But again, this is the overall structure, and once we start using this in a practical setting, you will see how all this will come together. Another thing that is important are the curly braces that you see here within the actual script. Now they reflect where that component starts and where it ends. Now most programming errors are due to misplacing of these braces, but you will see these braces really represented as a group of common code or similar code that are kind of grouped together. So for example, so we know that this rule is based on whatever name that we will call this, and this will include all of the events and conditions and actions. So it will start here and it will end here. So when our big IP matches a specific event that is configured, it will start here for that event. And it will run through the list from the top all the way down. And this event will follow the conditions, if there's a match, and then executing a particular action. So all that happens within the event group, which is what these curly braces really are represented as. Again, this is very important with any programming language that you learn. So let's go ahead and move this aside. Now, a big question to ask is what actual events and conditions can I use within this structure of an iRules script? What is the syntax or the code I can use basically? Well, all of that can be found on the Dev Central page on the f5.com website. So from there, when you go to f5.com, simply just go to Community. Let's go there. And this will present a wiki page of resources for many things such as iRules. So here, before you can access any of the resources available, you need to create a free account. So make sure that you do that. We're currently logged in. And from this particular page on the Dev Central page, you will want to go to API Docs. And once again, this will represent a great wiki page of resources of what we can actually do for a lot of the different products that F5 has. And what we're going to do here is we're going to go to the iRules section. So we're going to click on iRules. And let's say that we want to see all of the possible events that we can actually use within an iRules script. So here under iRules reference, simply go to events. Okay. And this will show the list of all events that we can use, the actual syntax of what we can actually type in within the script. And these are basically represented as categories. So one of the most common ones, for example, would be an HTTP request. So that'll be here under HTTP. And let's go ahead and select on, there it is, HTTP request. Let's click there. And this will show an example of where this event name will be added within the actual script. So again, very handy. Now for the condition component, which is basically this part right here that we talked about within the actual structure. And since we talk about a group of code, this will actually be represented as the starting brace and the ending brace. So all this represents the actual condition within the iRules script. So the particular condition itself that is defined, this part right here, this really consists of many different parts. It will consist of a statement command like if or else, among many others. And this deals with looking for a specific match of text based on the contents within the event and executing a set of actions if the result is true. So this here reflects the actions that is executed based on a match of the condition that is found. So to view the list of all possible statements like if, you can find that under iRules reference and by going to statements. And there you see one of the actual entries or statements reflects if. So that's where you can go there and get more information on that. Another part of the condition component is with the query or the remove command part, which is reflected right here. And this says HTTP : URI in this particular example. So this exists inside of the HTTP request messages, for example, and doing a query to look for a particular field to use for inspection. So the list of all supported query commands for this particular event for HTTP requests is reflected below right here, along with other useful descriptions. So these are possible query commands that I can use within our script and what we will use for some of the scripts that we will be building here. So it's a really good reference to see what is supported with or based on the actual event. And that query command will then follow with a particular operation that can be any string like contains or equals. So to view the list of all possible operations, they are listed under operations right here under iRules reference. So that operations itself will point to some user-defined value that should be queried based on the query command that is used. So this is the place to go to reference what code you can use with your iRules scripts. Now we will go ahead and we will apply many of this in the next set of videos to show you how all this works and how it can be applied.